Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Cowichan-Malahat-Langford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to notify you that I'll be splitting my time with the Honourable Member for North Island, Papal River. You know, Mr. Speaker, I've only been in this House for a short while. I'm on my first term, and every now and then there are moments in this House which make you fully aware of the privilege you bear in this place. The freedom of speech that we have in this honoured chamber, and the voices that we represent in our communities. Often those voices are marginalized and put off to the side. And I think today's motion is an opportunity for not only myself as a Member of Parliament, but for every one of us to speak up and to address a fundamental wrong of our history, and to try and get this country to go on a course of action to make things right by asking the Catholic Church to really outline its responsibility and issue that apology from the Pope. And you know, Mr. Speaker, in my riding of Cowichan-Malahat-Langford, which is home to the Coast Salish people, I live on territory that is unceded Coast Salish territory. And before I go on, I really want to raise my hands and say Haichka Siem to each and every one of the elders and survivors in the First Nations of my communities, because they have gone through so much, but they stand with such strength for their communities today. And it is simply amazing to know them and their strength and their courage for what they do for their communities after having suffered so much. And really, you know, if I can just make this day about one thing, it's for them. It really is for them. And I really feel that right to the inner core of my being. I also want to thank the member for Timmins, James Bay, for bringing this motion, and also to my colleague from Abitibi Bay James, Nunavik EU, for seconding the motion. Because I think this is an important time where we as a House come together, and we're really trying to get a course of action. And Mr. Speaker, what are we trying to do today? Well, the motion before us is we are inviting Pope Francis, and I really like that word, inviting, because there was a lot of consternation amongst the Catholic community, and even to some members of Parliament, that we can't really force the Catholic Church to do this, and they're right. And so that's why we're inviting the Pope to participate in this journey, to respond to the call to action number 58 of the TRC's report. Because, Mr. Speaker, if we look at the long and sorry history of residential schools in this country, it was a genocide, and there's a very fundamental reason why it went after the children. Because the children of any community are their future. And when you try to extinguish the children, to remove them from their culture, from their language, you are, in a sense, trying to eliminate those people. And in many cases it succeeded, and we are finding our way through that. You know, I'm a father of children myself, and I just can't imagine the trauma it would cause a person to see their children taken away from them at such a young age, and to come back broken beings, and you know, the intergenerational trauma that represents. The legacy of residential schools in this country, it's been very well documented, and it's an important documentation. But I think with all of the steps that we have made to coming towards reconciliation in this country, there's still an important part that we have to come to. And we have to acknowledge that the residential school system was created by religious organizations and the government together. They worked hand in hand. And I think through this motion that we have to call, as Parliament, we have to call upon a fellow partner in the residential school system, the Catholic Church, to apologize formally, just as the Government of Canada did in 2008. Mr. Speaker, I think for my constituents back home, just so that they have a better understanding of the debate today and what we're going through, I just want to formally read into the record what the TRC call to action number 58 actually states. I quote here, "We call upon the Pope to issue an apology to survivors, their families, and communities for the Roman Catholic Church's role in the spiritual, cultural, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children in Catholic-run residential schools. We call for that apology to be similar to the 2010 apology issued to Irish victims of abuse, and to occur within 1 year of the issuing of this report, and to be delivered by the Pope in Canada. Mr. Speaker, it's been unfortunate in recent weeks that certain Catholic bishops in Canada have been sort of muddying the waters and trying to explain why it would not be possible for the Pope to issue an apology because of various reasons, such as different orders and dioceses being responsible for the schools and the fact that many of them have apologized. But I think, Mr. Speaker, they're missing a key and fundamental point in this whole argument. That to any Catholic or to any non-Catholic, when we look at the entity that is the Catholic Church, we all uniformly recognize that the spiritual head of that church is the Pope. The Pope is the Church, the Bishop of Rome. And yes, we've had apologies from various orders within the Catholic Church, but the meaning that would come from a papal apology to be delivered here in Canada, I don't think we can understate just what that would mean to us as a country going forward, especially when so many First Nations still hold on to the Catholic faith, despite after having gone through all of those horrible abuses. And I know one of my colleagues claims that. She's a First Nations woman and a Catholic, and I just was so honored to be present in the chamber earlier today to hear her speech. So, Mr. Speaker, you know, the government apologized in 2008, and various churches except for the Catholic Church have apologized, but we need to have that papal apology. And if we look at what Pope Francis, you know, when he began his term as Pope, I think it may have been in 2013, but I think when he came and assumed the papacy, you know, he really is motivated as a Pope to sort of right historical wrongs and to be a Pope that addresses issues of social justice. And given what he has done and said in various parts of the world, I think that if he were listening to this debate today, and I certainly hope, if not listening to the specifics of the debate, that he actually hears the motion that this House, I hope, will eventually pass on Tuesday, preferably unanimously. I hope he hears it, that it will be the right thing to do, and that he can find it within his heart to step forward and make that important apology. And I hope that Catholics across this country take this message to heart, that we're not here trying to put a spotlight on them, to pressure them, but we want them to come forward with us, to look into each and every individual one of their hearts, to know that this is the right thing to do, and that maybe they can speak to other members of their community, to speak to the bishops, to get that message to the Vatican that this is really what we need to see. So, Mr. Speaker, I know my time is running short. This is one of those debates that you know, you could go on for hours and hours talking about. But I think what I want to end on is, you know, I think the government did apologize in 2008, but I think in some ways the voice of Parliament speaking out on this issue is even more powerful. Because the government is the leading party in the House of Commons, currently the Liberals, and they do represent a slice of the electorate. But if this House of Commons were to unify around this motion, to pass this motion unanimously, the message coming from that to Canadians and to the rest of the world is that every single one of these 338 ridings and the members of Parliament that represent them, we are speaking with a unified voice. Canadians are speaking with a unified voice. And I think that very fact amplifies the message and really makes it hit home. So, Mr. Speaker, I think I just want to conclude with you know, recognizing the trauma that's ongoing from this issue, and that we recognize that we want to continue to stand by with those survivors and with successive generations to really bring First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in as full equal partners in this country, as is their rightful place. Because I think only when we achieve that will this country really assume the greatness that we're so capable of reaching. We've come a long way, but we still have so long to go to really see the end of this dark chapter in our history. And I hope that members will find it in themselves on Tuesday next week to vote unanimously for this motion to send a clear and strong message to the Catholic Church that we hope the Pope will deliver an apology. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Mount Royal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my friend from Cowichan-Malahat-Langford for his eloquent words, as usual. I think in terms of how he framed the issue with the Catholic Church, I think he shares the perspective that I have, which is that this is not in any way an attack on the Catholic Church. We in this House, I think, appreciate the enormously important work the Catholic Church does across this country and across the world every day, and we hold nothing but the highest respect for the bishops of the Catholic Church in Canada and the Pope. And it is only because we respect the institution and the Pope so much that we recognize the importance of their sharing our view that we need to make amends and apologize to the victims of the residential schools in Canada. And I'm wondering if my colleague could address that issue, the issue that it is not by no means an attack on the Church, but rather a symbol of our recognition of the importance of the work of the Church that we're asking for this.
Member for Cowichan-Malahat-Langford.
I would agree with my colleague, and you know, he and I had the pleasure of sitting with each other on the Justice Committee, and I know during the course of some of our studies we had the bishops appear before the committee as witnesses, and I know they are sincere in their goodwill. I just think that maybe some of their remarks over the last few weeks unfortunately muddied the waters, but yes, I would agree with him completely. This is not an attack on Catholics or the Catholic institution. It's about this House recognizing that this is one of the key items that we need to do, and that's why I really like the wording of this motion. We're not forcing the Catholic Church to do anything. The wording of the motion is that we are inviting the Pope, and really I just hope the Pope in the Vatican hears this message, maybe through members of the Catholic community in Canada can help amplify this message. We as members of Parliament within our communities can help amplify this message, and that when he hears that message that we are inviting him to do this, I hope he will find it in his heart to come with us, join with us, and travel down the remainder of this journey together. Thank you.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Scarborough-Guildwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and again, thank the honourable member for his excellent speech. Human beings are strange at times, Mr. Speaker. The more you ask, the less you get. And I wonder whether the honourable member has contemplated the irony of a potential debate like this, whereby it's pretty obvious at this stage that the Catholic Church is unwilling to give an apology, that the ironical effect may be that we move further back from actually obtaining what is the desire of this House by in effect asking for an apology once again.
Member for Cowichan-Malahat-Langford.
I think I would agree with my colleague across the way in that it's unfortunate that we are debating this motion today, because I think all of us would have hoped that the Catholic Church, the Pope, would have just arrived at this decision of their own volition. I don't think, however, that by debating this issue and passing it next week, this motion from the House of Commons, that we are going to set the issue back, because I think this has put a much-needed spotlight on the issue, and you know, the national media is covering this, but I think it's incumbent upon us as members of Parliament not to just let this issue die on Tuesday next week when we vote on it, but as leaders of our respective communities to continue to have those conversations, especially with members of the Catholic community, because I know many of them would dearly like to see their Pope carry forward with this. And I think by keeping those conversations going on in the weeks and months ahead, by using the language of an invitation, I'm still an optimistic person that we can one day arrive at this and really get to that spot where the Pope comes to Canada, makes that formal apology, and my oh my, what a day that would be for the survivors of this system to hear that coming from the Holy Father of the Catholic faith.
Resuming debate.